Welcome. We are delighted that you're here tonight. Thank you for joining us for this very special and important day of remembrance, a memorial service to honor babies that have died too soon. This is Hospice of Chattanooga's 17th annual memorial service, but our first virtual one. We encourage you to settle in with your family. Please make sure that you have a candle for your family circle as we take time to honor your baby as well as other babies. In 1988, President Reagan declared October as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. He declared October 15th to be the day to honor babies. At 7 p.m. across the country, there will be a wave of candlelight lit for babies that have died too soon. Tonight you will hear from two different moms and their experiences in the death of their sons. Gwendolyn will share about her precious Caleb, and Melissa will share about her precious son Peter. We will have a slideshow of babies being honored here tonight, a reading of their names, a responsive prayer, and we will be concluding with some messages of hope from both Gwendolyn and Melissa. We would love to have you share with us your time with your family. We've created #ShareTheirStories for you to send pictures of your family circle and this experience. I would like to end with the following quote from an unknown author. We remember the babies born sleeping, those we carried but never held, those we held but could not bring home, those who came home but could not stay. May you find some peace tonight as we honor your baby as well as others. Thank you.
In October of 2018, we were busy living life when I unexpectedly found out I was pregnant. Our daughter Madeline was 7 and I was taking birth control, but we was so excited we could not wait to share the news. I called immediately to get an appointment at the baby doctor, and they told me they would not see me till around 9 weeks. The day of my first appointment finally came. We excitedly went to see our little blessing. My husband came along jokingly that he was just coming for a head count. You see, I'm a twin. My twin sister has twin girls. Twins run on both sides of our family, as well as my husband's. And as they like to refer to it as advanced maternal age, it makes your chances of conceiving multiples increase. As the doctor turned on the ultrasound machine, he quickly turned it off and said, "Don't be freaked out, but I think there's 2. I was thrilled, and my husband looked on in what seemed to be horror mixed with disbelief and joy. He knew it was a possibility, but it wasn't a reality until they confirmed it. My doctor reassured me that everything was fine. Multiples were more common than ever, and at that appointment, I also received a genetic test that would test for a wide range of birth defects, again, since I was advanced maternal age. The plus side of the test is it would tell us if there was the presence or the absence of the Y chromosome. We would know if there was a boy in the duo. A few short days later, we excitedly found out that there's at least 1 boy in the mix. We couldn't wait to find out what the other baby was, so we scheduled a high-definition ultrasound to find out her gender. It's a girl. A boy and a girl, a perfect combination. I immediately began to obsessing over everything twins. From their names to their clothes, we came up with some interesting combinations, but ultimately decided on Kaylee Renee and Kayla Bryan. Double of everything. 2 swings, 2 high chairs, 2 cribs, 2 car seats, 2 sets of blankets, and more matching outfits than I care to disclose. And about 20 or so bottles that I figured it would take to make it through 1 day of newborn feeding every 3 hours. We were ready for this dynamic duo that we later named CR Squared. Time ticked by without much out of the ordinary. some high blood pressure that we controlled with medicine, heartburn, and just being exhausted. They were active babies. Kaylee was always lower on my right side and would move up and down when we tried to measure her, get her heartbeat. And Caleb was high on my left side. He was always calm and relaxed. While we were doing our high definition ultrasound, we actually have a video of Kaylee kicking him in the head every time he would get close. Towards the end of March, I started having biweekly appointments. The blessing of having twins is I had ultrasounds frequently, so I got to see my little babies and to make sure that they were growing at the same rate, which they were. April 17th started like many other days. We had an ultrasound appointment downtown, and then we was going to tour labor and delivery. We picked up my daughter at school and took her with us to an appointment. She loved seeing her brother and sister. I climbed up on the table, and the ultrasound tech quickly looked at them both and then started measuring baby A, which was my Kaylee. We oohed and awed. We were excited to see her. She then did something very strange. She turned off the ultrasound machine and said she had to get my chart to check on what their measurements were the last week. After she left the room, I got up to use the bathroom, and when I came back, she still wasn't back. I knew something was wrong. Several more minutes go by, and she comes back into the room with the nurse. The ultrasound tech turned on the machine again and quickly turned it off, but not before I saw that line where my Caleb's heartbeat should have been. Gwen, baby B doesn't have a heartbeat anymore, were the next words I heard. And at that moment, my heart shattered. No heartbeat? How can that be? We just heard it last week. I just felt him move. My husband was destroyed. I will never forget the look on his face. There in that room just months earlier, we learned that we were having twins. My daughter sitting across the room in a chair knew something was wrong. She kept saying, "Mama, what's wrong with Caleb? What's wrong with brother?" Tears already running down her face, I climbed off that table and held my beautiful girl and told her her brother was no longer with us. His heart was no longer beating, and he was in heaven with Jesus. She let out the most heart-wrenching cry. Her brother, my husband's only son, my precious Caleb, was no longer alive. We spent the next several days in the hospital keeping a close eye on Kaylee. We had no clue what happened to Caleb, and we wasn't going to let it happen to her. At 33 weeks on April the 23rd, Kaylee was born at 5:37 p.m. and Caleb at 5:39. We was relieved that Kaylee was alive, small but beautiful and strong. But now that both babies were delivered, I had to come to terms that my Caleb was no longer with us. As long as I was still pregnant, he was safe with me. And I wasn't prepared to say goodbye. I was able to hold him and love on him, this precious child that I would never take home. He was perfect. He looked just like his sisters. 10 fingers and 10 toes, my beautiful angel. A few days later, I was discharged home, while Kaylee spent the next 36 days in the NICU. I left the hospital empty-handed and returned home, where I spent the previous months preparing for my twins. I had 2 of everything, but now I would only need 1. I walked into their rooms heartbroken. I had so many hopes and dreams for these 2 that were destroyed with just a few words. How could I be a mother to my beautiful girls while my heart longed for one more day with Caleb? A few months later, we began planning his celebration of life. How did I go from picking out matching outfits to urns and flowers to say goodbye to my only son? This is a day that I could have never imagined having to live. No one ever told me about stillbirths. I thought after 12 weeks my babies were safe. Why did my baby die? What went wrong? The answers to these questions I will never know. But one thing that I can say with confidence is Caleb will always be present and celebrated in my life. I still match my twins, Except now, a special teddy bear we call Caleb Bear wears the outfits that were meant for him. I spend time talking with him beside a tree I planted in his memory, or I hold a picture I keep throughout our homes. And I hold him closely in my heart until I can hold him again in my arms. We said our goodbye, for his journey this side of heaven was over, but in my heart he will live forever. The only life he ever knew was listening to the beating of my heart, and that is where he remains. My son's death date was just the beginning of our journey, and I vow to remember and celebrate him daily, to speak his name often, and to tell his story to anyone that will listen. Until we meet again, my precious Caleb.
I would like to welcome you to this journey that none of us wanted to be on. My journey started March 29, 2011, when my son, Peter Henry, also known as Whittle Pete, was born sleeping. My oldest daughter was 3.5 when our son was born. My pregnancy was going great until about 28 weeks when I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes and advanced maternal age. So I was sent to a high-risk doctor where they watched me closely. When I was 35 weeks and 4 days, I went to my high-risk doctor and I had elevated blood pressure. So my doctor put me on blood pressure medicine, bed rest, and a 24-hour urine, which I did at home. I went home that day a little worried, but I knew I would do anything I could to get my baby here safely. I took the medication as I was told. When I was 36 weeks exactly, on our 4th wedding anniversary, I did a non-stress test which looked good, but not great. So we also had an ultrasound. I saw my precious baby suckling. It was so sweet. We tried to talk my doctor into delivering him the next day, but he said because he was not in distress, he wouldn't deliver him. The next day, my doctor called and wanted me to come in before my high-risk appointment on Monday because some tests were off, but not so much that I needed to see him that day. We went through the weekend as usual. On Monday morning at 4 a.m., I felt my precious son move in my belly just like he did every morning. We got up, went to the doctor, my mom and my daughter and I. When we got there, the nurse took me to the ultrasound room and we were joking about him being born that week. Little did we know he really would be born that week. She tried to hook me up to the non-stress machine, but couldn't find his heartbeat. So she turned on the ultrasound to see where he was. She looked for his heartbeat for what seemed like an hour. Then she said she was going to get the doctor. He was just laying weird. When she walked out of the room, I felt like something was wrong. When the doctor came in, he looked at the ultrasound for about 10 minutes and said the words no parent wants to hear. I'm sorry, but there's no heartbeat. The worst 7 words I've ever heard. The next few hours were a blur. I couldn't believe what was happening. I went home that night and was to return to the hospital the next day. I went home and spent time with my family and tried to sleep that night, but all I could think about was my precious baby. I pushed on my belly all night long, hoping he would just move. When I got to the hospital the next morning, I couldn't even talk without crying. When my doctor came into the room the first time, he tried to turn him because he was laying sideways. He couldn't get him to turn because I had no fluid. I don't know what happened to my fluid. My doctor told me I would have to have a C-section, which I was happy about because I couldn't see going through all that labor and pain to not be able to bring home my baby. I remember going into the operating room and I screamed and tried to climb off the operating table because that was the last few moments I would have with my child safe in my belly. I held my baby for 18 hours. I loved on him, kissed him, sang to him, and we even had pictures taken with him. I took in every moment I had with him because that was all I was going to have. When I handed him to the nurse for the very last time, she said to me, "Most people only dream of angels. We got to hold one." That was the last time I saw my baby. The early days of my grief were really hard. I had a 3.5-year-old that needed her mom. She was a happy, bubbly little girl who waited for her brother to come home. And now she was a sad little girl who didn't understand why her brother was never going to come home. We told her he was our star in the sky and he would always be with us. For the first 6 months, every night we would have to go outside and find his star in the sky and make a wish and sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. She sang that song to him his whole life. Kerrigan has always worried about her brother. When she was, another great story, 4 months after he died, we were going to work in the morning and it was raining. And she asked me, "Mom, does my brother get wet?" Because we hadn't bought a headstone yet. I knew if I didn't answer the question correctly, she would have me at the cemetery every time it rained to put an umbrella over him to make sure he was protected. So I just told her that we had dressed him in warm clothes with a fuzzy blanket and he was safe in his casket and he would never get wet. She just said okay and never asked about it again. The first year was a roller coaster ride that I just wanted to get off. On the 6-month anniversary, I met someone who had lost a baby 54 years earlier, and she gave me the best advice. She told me that I would never forget my baby, and I would always love him, and it would always hurt, but it won't hurt so bad forever. I've thought about that so many times when I feel my grief bubbling up. On the 1-year anniversary, I was 10 weeks pregnant with my second daughter. She's now 8 and loves her brother just as much as if she were alive when he was born. I want to leave you with this quote from Dr. Seuss. "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened." Thank you.
In the last 7 months, we've gotten used to calling these virtual meetings. But as you've been listening, this is not virtual, this is real. Our grief is real. Our memories are strong and warm and important. A lot of you who are watching tonight have been to this service in past years. Some of you come here one time a year to share your grief and the love you have for your child. It's a hard thing to not be able to do that again. We miss that kind of community. But it's important for us to remember that this is not something that is done with no idea of what our losses have been and what the joys those children were in our lives and what they remain in our lives. In my own family, losing a brother when I was 3, almost 4 years old, 60 years ago, it still impacts my family. We still remember him and name him, and so do you. In fact, you're going to see in a few moments some slides of families who wanted to make sure that they were still sharing in the community that we've been building over the years. When you look at these slides, remember, these children are an important part of our lives, not just their lives, but our lives. We understand that when we share grief, which is an odd emotion, it's actually something we can share. We are stronger, we are encouraged, and we understand most of all that we're not alone. COVID is cruel. It's made us feel alone. Tonight, as you listen to these stories, as you see these slides, as you grieve with us, remember, we are not alone.
High above the chimney top, that's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dream that you did to, oh why can't I? Trees of green and red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Well, blue and I see clouds of white and the brightness of day. I like the dark and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking and singing, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. And the dreams that you dare to, why, oh, why can't I?
This is a poem called Thinking of You with Love. The author is unknown. We thought of you with love today, but that is nothing new. We thought about you yesterday, the days before that too. We think of you in silence. We often speak your name. All we have are memories and your picture in a frame. Your memory is our keepsake, with which we will never part. Each and every day, we have you in our hearts. A million times we've wanted you, a million times we've cried. If love could only have saved you, you never would have died. It broke our hearts to lose you, but you didn't go alone, for part of us went with you the day you left this home. So we are going to begin our candlelight. And so what I would like for each family unit person out there to go ahead and light your candle. And as you're lighting your candle in your home or wherever you are, say your baby or your baby's names. Say them out loud. Be able to speak their names, because that's so, so important. Gwen, why don't you say his name?
Caleb Ryan Jones.
Peter Henry Alexander.
Miles Ferguson Petty. Camry Gillespie Sneed. Baby Boyd Desmond.
Baby Lotta. David Alexander Crockett. Cotton Joseph Potter. Libby Mauve Daly. Briley Rose Kendrick. Samuel Sanford. Baby boy Bond. All the babies that have died far too soon. We're going to have a responsive prayer, and we're going to do it like this. I'm going to say some things that I hope will be precious to you, and you're going to respond, as I will, wherever we are, by saying, we remember them. because we are remembering our babies. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and the chill of the winter, we remember them. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, say it with me, we remember them. In the blueness of the skies and the warmth of the summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year, and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick of heart, with me, we remember them. When we have joys and special celebrations we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are a part of us. We remember them.
We typically use death dates to mark the date when someone's life is finished. But what if that life never lived outside their mother's womb? Ones that never saw the sun, felt the cool breeze, heard the birds chirping, or felt the embrace of those who loved them. The only life they ever knew was the warm existence inside their mother's womb, listening to the swishing sounds of their mother's blood pulsing through their veins, and listening to the sweet lullabies of their mother's heart, the heart that would love them no matter which side of heaven they were on. But to me, my sweet Caleb's death date means as much to me as my other children's birth date. Mother's Day was a few short weeks after Caleb went to be with the Lord. Kaylee's NICU nurse knew I was struggling and was a constant source of strength during her stay. That day, she gave me a notebook, and inside she wrote 25 things for me to remember daily. And here are a few of them. Number 1, it is not your fault. Number 3, it's absolutely not your fault. Number 4, you're an amazing mother. Number 11, I believe God is with you now and always. He is not punishing you. Number 12, you have to take care of yourself. Don't neglect yourself. Number 13, it is not your fault. Number 14, no one who loves you is blaming you. Number 23, it is okay to cry. It's okay to need. It's okay not to be okay all of the time. Number 24, your heart has the right to be broken. Help it be hopeful. Being hopeful takes the edge off. And number 25, no matter how you feel, no matter how hard it is to accept, it is not your fault. Please don't blame yourself, especially on the hard days. Our babies live their entire lives listening to the beat of our hearts, and our hearts they will be forever. Remember them often, speak their names, and include them in your lives. Find your special ways of celebrating our sons and daughters. Give yourself grace. Our children would want us to be the best version of ourselves. There is love after loss. Most importantly, love yourself. Thank you.
An angel in the book of life wrote down my baby's birth and whispered as she closed the book, too beautiful for earth, forever in our family, forever in our hearts. Thank you for joining us to remember all of the babies born too soon. Please share your story below in the comments using the hashtag #ShareTheirStories. Please be gentle on yourself and remember everybody grieves differently and you must do what is best for you. Thank you.